Is anyone else doing that, or is that just your idea?
No, that wasn't my idea.
Oh, okay.
It was Billy's idea, and a lot of people are doing it.
Oh, nice. Oh, yeah. I have seen some of the other guys now that you mention it.
Yeah, I think yeah, Matt, you're doing it too, right? The 17,
I
17.
I keep forgetting to do it.
Ah,
I started it, yeah, and I've been doing. I think I've done two, but I lose. I get so like squirrel in the headlights type thing.
hmm.
It's a cool thing though. Like I love seeing everybody's like pictures from throughout the season or some fun moments that they've had.
Me too.
I did the so earlier before the season started, I did this thing, the countdown to the season. I don't know if you guys remember that,
I remember that. Yeah.
where I'd post like a number corresponding to the days until the opening game. And that was a thing where I was telling Phil that I feel really burned out right now as far as prepping and doing and stuff like that. And so I was doing that while I was on a cruise before the Austin game, and so I would like sneak away, find a number, and then post it and stuff. And so I was like, I'll let Billy and everybody else have fun with this one.
Yeah.
Well, Matt, are you? Do you feel ready? I usually have to gather my thoughts before I start. If I don't,
Oh, I didn't
that's
even
when
know. I didn't even realize we were live.
More
Oh,
live.
I
Yeah.
hit it
Ah,
right when you left. I went like
nice.
I was sneaky about it.
Oh, I'm glad I didn't look like a jackass when I walked in. Yeah. Yeah, I'm ready whenever you guys are, I guess.
I'm gonna hit the right button this time, which it worked out fine. So that's why we have backups.
There you go. You guys ready?
Hitting
Yeah.
record now.
Welcome in, everybody, to Flyover Footy. You're listening to us on the Big 550 KTRS or on the podcast platform of your choice. My name is Matt Baker. As always, joining you with my friends in soccer, Phil Grooms and Santiago Beltran. This is a different Flyover Footy, though, because it's the first of the offseason. We have officially arrived to our first offseason after our inaugural year, and we're going to use this episode to look back before we kind of move ahead, before we look to the next calendar of events this offseason. We're going to talk about the full season we just had. And in an homage to our Coach of the Year candidate, Bradley Carnell, we're going to take a look at this season in blocks of games. It's not going to be the 6 blocks like Bradley Carnell and Lutz looked at the season this past year, but we got some fun themes to really dive into. But before we all get into that, Phil, Santi, how are you guys? And Phil, how was your week?
Good. It's weird. I always go on a camping trip this weekend, and usually, if St. Louis FC did well, I would be missing something or not able to make it. So, good and bad in that regard. But I'm looking forward to talking about the season today for sure, and looking back on everything. I'm ready. I'm actually ready now that I've accepted what's happened.
A few days of just letting things be before we get a chance to look at it. Santi, how about you?
Hey, no, it's been a good week. It's weird to have a week when you are not thinking about a game. I feel like it's been a long time since the last time, and yeah, there were a couple of breaks, Leagues Cup, and then the international break in October. But it's just weird to not have a game to look forward to. But hey, no, ready to talk about the season. Just having a flashback when you talk about blocks of games, but hey, I'm okay.
You were the one, and nobody probably knows this, but you were the one who asked at one point this year Bradley Carnell in the press room about the blocks of games, and he had the most, I don't know, I felt like it was the most absurd answer possible, tongue in cheek, clearly messing with you type of a thing, saying, who said we talk about blocks? And you mentioned, oh, I think you said 5-game blocks, and he's like, oh, no, it's 6 games.
I don't think I even said a number, or no, I think I said 6.
He like corrected you, but while being tongue in cheek about there being the
Yeah.
existence of blocks of games.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
it was awesome, I felt. And I think this is an appropriate way to look at this, because if you think about this past season, there were clear themes that I saw develop in stretches of games. And so we're going to go block by block of these. We're not going to go into every single nuance and detail about every game, but let's set the stage with what I view as how this season kind of ended up. You started with the obvious 5-game winning streak, the history making first expansion team to win 5 games in a row, that kind of thing. You had some struggles after that, the shutouts to Minnesota and Seattle. The struggles coincided with the US Open Cup, fixture congestions, and the loss of Klaus. You had a third block that I saw that had another winning streak develop. You had another block after that with some weird FC Dallas weather issues that led into losing Leuven for a period of time. And then you had another block right before League's Cup that started with the San Jose Earthquakes game that kind of showed us a new lineup, a new version of a lineup. It had the ascension of AZ Jackson, Sam Adeniran, Akil Watts, and Josh Yaro. Then you had everything kind of stop with League's Cup. League's Cup had this big break because we were bounced. Back at it with a very kind of bizarre return. It was a back and forth. The first time we had win-loss type scenario this year, and kind of the only time. And then after that, it was streaks. It was draws, wins, losses. You had Klaus and Leuven had returned, and you kind of end it in this obviously downtrodden way. But looking at it in that way, holistically, it's just kind of fun. So guys, let's start with this first 5-game winning streak. Obviously, that's where a lot of the core memories from this season were made and began and come from. You have the Austin game where we came from behind to win, first game on the road. Nobody expected us to. You had the Charlotte game where kind of the same thing happened. We didn't get the chance to score first in our own stadium. There was the own goal that Jake Nerwinski said that he still wants to take credit for. But you had some dominating performances. So what are some things you guys remember about that first 5 games? Phil, do you want to go first?
Yeah. First of all, I want to thank you for breaking these into these little chapters, if you will, because I do think it really helps me. I always try to make our shows a certain way of thinking about it, and it really helps me think about the season in a simple way. And yeah, I've been listening back to the voices because like we keep really busy. There's only a certain amount of information I have time for intaking for shows, and so I don't have time for City Voice. I've been listening to them and just hearing the guys, every single one of them mention that Austin game as being like one of the most memorable games of the entire season, not just like that it was the first. Everyone that that they can keep up, especially someone like Hebert who hadn't played on that level and was coming from City 2. And had clearly not been believed in most of his life and career as a player, being like, I can handle this, I can do this. So listening to players talk about Austin, and it was the same for me, kind of, in that I was like, boy, that was a really fun, obvious, good win, and we can trust our team to have a win like this sometimes, right? I wasn't sold, but the 5-game winning streak, I would say by the 3rd or 4th game, at that point, we were like, prove us wrong at this point, like we're starting to believe this. But I don't know how you felt, Santiago.
No, it felt great. It felt great. That first win in Austin that was unexpected to a lot of people, and then the team winning multiple games and coming from behind against both Charlotte and Portland Timbers, also against Austin, and just thinking about players from these 5 games, to me it was like the welcoming to the league for Edouard Leuven and Joao Klaus, 2 players that maybe when the team was assembled and the roster was ready, a lot of people didn't know who these guys were, and they proved the league that they belong and that they could contribute to City's success.
There were a lot of introductions in this lineup. You had the introduction of Indiana Vasilev playing a central midfield position in place of Jabulu Blom because he was arriving late, still getting acclimated. Blom himself came on the field. You had the John Nelson, Jake Nerwinski fullback combination in these first few games. You had buckets of goals. At the end of the season, two of the takeaways I would say are just how quickly we took people by surprise in these opening games. We scored 3, 2, 3, and 4 goals in our first 5 games. This is also where we started the entire concept of overperforming our XG. The highest our XG was in these first 5 games is 2.1 in that San Jose game where we scored 3. We're overperforming consistently. We got ahead of ourselves in that regard. we were clicking on all cylinders. We were winning home and away, because don't forget, we were away, home, away, and we won all these games. And the other fun thing I saw in these 5 guys is at the beginning of the season, if you remember, we had this theory that Carnell was running formations based on home versus away. The first Austin game, the formation was a 4-2-3-1 with Klaus up top. The second game with Charlotte was a 4-4-2 with Klaus and Gioacchini. Portland Timbers away returned to the 4-2-3-1. San Jose at home, we had a 4-4-2. And then he tore it all apart with away to Real Salt Lake, a 4-4-2. So it was a fun way to start the season that I felt, obviously, you're riding that high, and you just really never thought it would end until we get to that second set of games, that second block, where the low block is what really stopped us in our tracks. So, Phil, let me know what you saw that second block and some key takeaways, because we had a loss to Minnesota United, a loss to the Seattle Sounders, both scoreless for the first time. And this was really where things kind of started to go off the rails from the national media saying, okay, now they're regressing. This is the team that we thought they were going to be. And then we bounced back in that tornado warning game, beating FC Cincinnati 5-1, and then just dumping goals on, even at that point, Cincinnati was seen as one of, if not the best team in the league. The draw to the Colorado Rapids happened. Klaus saw 12 shots. I'm sorry, not Klaus. Berkey saw 12 shots on goal. And that was a Freudian slip, because that's also the game where Klaus was injured. And then we had the loss after loss after loss to the Portland Timbers, Chicago Fire in the Open Cup, and the Chicago Fire in MLS. What are some takeaways, Phil, you have from this block of games?
I would say this block of games is still kind of haunting me, because, at this point, yes, we lost Klaus. And yes, it was rough, and figuring that out was also one of my favorite parts of the season. But, it was when I was more focused on the fact that we're losing to a certain kind of team because of this block, especially someone like Minnesota, someone like Chicago, who got us twice with different lineups. There's some play there. But, I started to worry that we weren't going to be able to beat a certain team for the rest of the season, and that, City just kind of got lucky and drew the first 5 games like the kind of teams that they can beat. That's not all true, but I was starting to feel like, okay, this is harsh reality. We lost Klaus, and we also can't beat anyone that sets up a low block against us or counterattacks, this was the first adjustment, and that's my favorite thing. I imagine we'll get into that in the next block, but I will not forget this, because it's still haunting me when I look at this playoff loss right from the last two weeks.
Yeah, Santi, were you feeling just as haunted?
Yeah, it was those first 2 losses against Minnesota and Seattle. I was like, okay, maybe the team, it can compete, but it's not that good, and teams are going to start figuring out how to play St. Louis City and get results. And then after that, you get to that Cincinnati game that was just amazing. Rain delay. It brought some flashbacks from games, St. Louis FC games at Fenton at Soccer Park, where we will be there forever sometimes and not getting any news. And it was a similar feeling. And in the end, for a moment, I thought this game is not gonna be played and it's gonna be rescheduled. But then all of the sudden, the skies cleared up and we had a game, and it was goals raining back and forth. So that was a great memory. And then from that, you get to that next game against Colorado, and yeah, City almost got the 3 points, but it was one of those games that Colorado had a lot of chances, and Berkey came up big. And then you had the losing streak, Portland, Chicago. The beginning of that Dallas game was also kind of in the middle of that. That to me, that first half against Dallas, the team looked good. But since that game wasn't finished, just a 3-game losing streak, and I was really scared for that next game that was part of the next block.
Yeah, and that's where reality had set in with this block, because in the first 5 games, our possession never went over 48%. We were playing within ourselves. We were seeing clear cut, even to carry to the end of the season. This first 5 games, you could look as the model for what our style of play was. And there is a lot of truth to taking teams by surprise. And you had the conversations about the back passes and the effectiveness of the press. And that was all established in the first 5 games. But with this second block that we're talking about, Minnesota United forced us into 54% possession. The Seattle Sounders, we ran out in a 5-man backline for the first time. And this was the game where we kept them scoreless until late in the game, and they just dumped 3 goals on us to end it. The Cincinnati game was almost the saving grace that we needed to, I feel, climb back into and get within ourselves. The Colorado Rapids away was a harsh kind of reality check with Berkey taking so many shots and the loss of Klaus. Portland worried me, Santi, to your point there, Portland worried me along with the Chicago Fire in playing the same team twice at that point, where we beat Portland, but then we lost to them the second time, again, them forcing us into over 50% possession. So teams starting to maybe figure out the next time they play City. And after back-to-back losses with Chicago to end this block of games, getting bounced from the Open Cup and not being able to put a single goal against them in MLS play, you're going from Chicago to Sporting. So as we bridge this gap to the next block of 3 games, this is a pretty low point, maybe one of the lowest points, except for how the season ended, that we could be looking at. We had lost Klaus. We didn't know when we were going to get him back. We didn't know how to win with him. We didn't even know how to score goals without him. So there's a lot of unknown. He had scored 5 goals in that first block of games. So this to me was potentially the lowest of the low, even considering the Leuven injury. This was a lot of stuff to handle and to think how City's going to climb back out of it. But then, thankfully, Sporting KC came to town. You had the gravitas around the soccer capital, soccer city conversation. You had the cease and desists. You had the billboards on I-70. You had the fire and the passion ignited. You were clearly seeing everybody from the club trying to encourage a turning of the page away from Chicago. We don't want to think about Chicago. They talk about a rivalry, but we don't see it. We're focused on our neighbors in Kansas. And then they come to town and we get exactly what we needed on multiple fronts. We not only get the win, we get buckets of goals, and we figure out how to win without Klaus. 4 months is how long we had to deal without Klaus this year for a majority of the season. And Indiana Vassilev came and showed up when we needed him the most in that 10 role in a 4-2-3-1, scoring 2 goals and kicking off this next set of games. Phil, what did you think about this KC game and this block in general?
First of all, Matt, your memory is, I mean, you probably did more studying than I did, but my gosh, I forgot half of that stuff, or I wouldn't be able to memory recall that. So oh my gosh, really good stuff there. But, if I was, disappointed, if we were at an all-time low, as you kind of put it there in the last block, I would say this was the biggest relief of the season for me. And it was the biggest earning of respect for me for, Bradley Carnell and the staff and the players. If you are able to if you're able to get on such a bad losing streak, look like you have no ideas in the final third, and then you're able to change and fix that on the fly by, players adjusting, tactical adjustments. If I was being haunted by the last block in the playoffs, my hope in that second SKC game was in that they have been able to adjust in the past. And I thought if we're going to do it, we just got to, harken back to what just happened in the block we're about to talk about. And just the fact that they were able to figure that out to me is still impressive. I'm still amazed at what Nico Gioacchini was able to do in this time period without Klaus, and that, clearly Bradley Carnell never lost faith in all of his players, and they proved themselves over and over. But this was the beginning of that for me. I'm just my favorite point in the season. This is it. I love it. And it gives me faith, not just in, for the rest of this last season, but next year, we're going to talk at the end probably about, all the doubters are coming out of the woodwork now again, as you would expect in a loss like what just happened. I still have faith for this reason right here. Love it.
I love from the lowest of the lows that I mentioned to the highest of the highs. Santi, how did you see it?
Well, 10 goals in 3 games and beating your neighbor, your rival, when you were at a low moment, it's just great. When that game against Sporting KC came, and I mentioned in the previous time, I was like, this is looking scary, especially because Sporting KC was starting to win games after starting the season at a really low point. I remember joking when they were still winless. I was like, I want them to win a couple of games before they come to City Park, but the tables turned around and they had won a few in a row, and City was on that winless streak, and I was like, this is not looking good. But Matt, you mentioned the introduction of Indiana Vassilev as a number 6 in the game against Austin, and then you have Indiana Vassilev as a number 10 in this game against Sporting KC, and things just went great during that stretch of 3 games. Multiple players scoring goals. Miguel Perez scoring his first goal in MLS. That was a great moment, and just beating Sporting, beating Houston, beating Vancouver, teams that were also like at that point teams that I was thinking, okay, these are the teams that if City wants to make the playoffs, these are the teams that is gonna need to beat and take points from. So those were great wins.
It was a stretch of 3 home games, and you see going into that the potential for Sporting, for Vancouver and Houston, who at the time were still playoff contenders. Any one of them catching fire at the wrong moment could be disastrous, and especially with the form that we were in going into this, was worrisome. So we know the excitement from Sporting. Vancouver was memorable, and when I say it, you guys are going to remember exactly where you were and how you felt. Vancouver was the first goal from our homegrown Miguel Perez. That was the game. He had came in, he had scored on his right foot, 90+4, and it was at the time, I think, the loudest City Park had ever been.
Maybe still. What do you guys think?
Maybe still. I have it. Spoiler alert for when we talk in our wind down. I think I have this as one of my top moments of the year. It was incredible.
I think, if it wasn't the loudest, probably top 3. I think when Klaus came back after being out for so long, when he came back at City Park, I think it was really loud too. But I don't know which one of the two. But yeah, that was one of the best moments of the seasons when Miggy scored that goal. For me, just calling that goal was also amazing, and just seeing one of the guys that. He was in the academy in 2021, then played for City 2 last year, and then seeing him getting important minutes with the team at the beginning of the season, and then scoring his first goal in MLS. That was just great.
And I don't know if we would have seen him if there wasn't the Jabulo Blom situation. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, he may not have been the first homegrown, because I don't know if he would have been ranked the highest at the time, but I think he performs so well that maybe he should have been even. I would even believe that.
That's a good call, and I think necessity might have dictated it, but he took the opportunity, bulls by the horn, and he ran with it. So people look back at Miggy with mixed feelings as far as the performance, especially midway through the season. But I think it mirrored a lot of what ended up happening with City as far as the ups and downs, the different blocks of wins and losses, and how that ended up going. I'm glad he was able to take a step back and continue to develop himself without the pressure of needing to perform consistently this inaugural season, 18, graduating high school, like that entire thing, that whole narrative at this time, where I think he graduated on a Thursday and he scored his goal on a Saturday.
Yeah.
Are you kidding me?
That's so good. It was too perfect. One of the many perfect planets aligned situations of the season.
Yes. And along with that, so you're looking at Edu Leuven, Nico Gioacchini, who are scoring in the other 2 games. They'd scored. I spoke about Vassilev scoring. Well, Leuven and Gioacchini scored against Sporting, and then Leuven and Gioacchini and Tomas Ostrak scored against Houston. So these guys are catching fire too, right when we need them to bring us out from losing Klaus to figuring things out. Talking about how Nico Gioacchini is learning to play that number 9 position at this point. So many things are kind of clicking a few games after we lose Klaus, and then you're riding that high. But unfortunately, I think circumstances get in the way after that. So our next block in my eyes starts with FC Dallas and our 2-0 loss. But Santi, you called it earlier. This was the not rescheduled, like re-picked up game. We restarted the game. The restarted game, FC Dallas, where it was the only game this entire season we did not have a single substitute because we had to use the same roster from before. So we went back to Dallas to finish the 55 minutes or 45 minutes of a match. Yeah, 40 minutes of a match. That was a 2-0 loss. And then it kind of, I'm not saying the wheels came off again, but the next match was that Sunday LA Galaxy 1-1 draw at home, where come to find out we lost Edu Leuven to a quad injury. I think he finished the game, but he didn't play against Nashville. He didn't play against Real Salt Lake. And suddenly we're without both of our designated players. We're having to figure out how to win. We're going away to Nashville in that first game after losing Leuven, facing a Hani Mukhtar-led team that is just flying high. They're undefeated at home at that point, I believe. And we ended up playing at one point Kyle Hebert at right back, if you remember.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it did not go well. I can't remember the exact specifics of the match, but I remember, I think this might have been the match he picked up a red card.
He did, yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, Phil, to your point, these memories are just coming back at moments that for this match, I really wish they wouldn't, because I could go with forgetting Nashville. And then Real Salt Lake, I think that was a midweek match at home, 3-1 loss. This was maybe the most disappointing one to me, knowing that we had beaten Real Salt Lake earlier in the season. But the fact that we lost to them again, I mentioned earlier in that second block, facing Portland twice early in the season, losing to them the second time. You're seeing trends here. You're seeing a second time now playing Real Salt Lake, and we lose 3-1 at home. They're figuring us out. We had a 0.7 expected goals in there. Things just aren't going well in this stretch of games. So I almost just want to move on. But, what do you guys remember from this stretch, and how do you remember feeling, Phil?
This is we can move on, because for me this is like such. Even at the time, I was like, what a weird stretch of games. And Leuven's out, away to LA Galaxy, that didn't bother me. Any away game we draw, that's fine. I'm not going to complain about that. Home. Oh, was it? I'm so sorry.
Yeah,
you're right. Yeah. You're right. Thank you. So yeah, that bothered me.
Which makes it even worse a little bit.
It does. But the Nashville game that was next, I was like, man, this team is probably our nemesis as far as playing style. They were really hot at the time.
Yes.
That one, it didn't bother me at all either. Real Salt Lake, yeah, that one bothered me. But like I said, it was a midweek match. It was just such a weird situation for all of these. I won't beat it into the ground. I wasn't worried at the time, and it doesn't bother me now, to be honest with you.
Santi?
I was worried about after that loss against Real Salt Lake, just because you think about, okay, the team went to Utah, beat them 4-0, and then come back to City Park, and Real Salt Lake played a great game, and another, again, losing a streak. If you count that Dallas game, 1 point in 4 games, and then you have to go to visit San Jose, who at that point they were having a good season too. So I was a little bit worried about a string of not getting results. The game against Galaxy wasn't bad. It's just after the team scored that first goal, had some chances to get the second one, couldn't put away the game, and then Galaxy ended up scoring in a defensive mistake, and the team didn't get the 3 points. But yeah, after that Real Salt Lake game, I was concerned, and I know that was like the second time all the national reporters were like, oh yeah, they now are showing what kind of team they are, and I keep thinking about this regression to the mean from Matt Doyle, and that was one of those, like, okay, the team is regressing, and again, teams are figuring out how to play them without Leuven, without Klaus, but then you go to the next segment, and a good segment again.
Yeah, I will say, because this is my MO, trying to find positives in pockets where it's difficult to find positives. We mentioned earlier Nico Gioacchini finding form after Klaus. It took a little bit to really figure out how to play that 9 that we needed him to in our system. In this stretch of 3 games, or 4 games, really, if you count FC Dallas, but really these 3, Galaxy, Nashville, and Real Salt Lake, it was Nico Gioacchini that scored in all 3 of those games. He was our only goal scorer in these 3 games where we lost. We drew 1-1, we lost 3-1, and we lost 3-1. So if anything can be taken away positive, it was that Nico Gioacchini's form continued to stay hot and stay strong. But then pivoting into this next block, I think the mention of Matt Doyle is a good one because we're 4 blocks into this season now, going into San Jose on June 24th. I saw this not as any kind of regression, but especially if you look at it in totality with these blocks, how many times can you possibly regress before you start calling it ebbs and flows and handling an MLS season? The way that this City team bounced back time and time again and navigated the season is, to me, highlighted by this San Jose game. We felt it for the first time with Sporting KC in that 4-0, but starting with San Jose, it was the 3rd match in 8 days. We ran out a heavily rotated lineup from anything we had seen before. People saw this lineup, and I remember everybody up in arms that were waving the white flag going into this, saying, all right, we've lost 2. We're going to just throw this one in, and we're going to regroup in time for Colorado Rapids next week. But instead, we have Sam Adeniran scoring a brace and leading St. Louis to victory after being recalled that week from San Antonio. He didn't have any practice time before this game. This was Sam hopping on a flight, being called late in the week, getting to San Jose, saying, hey guys, remember me, and then scoring 2 goals on the San Jose Earthquakes, a playoff team at the time. We use that as momentum going into the next few games because our goal scorers continued to be Sam Adeniran. It started to be AZ Jackson. Tim Parker had 2 goals in this stretch of games. You're traveling, you're going away to San Jose, you're going back home to Colorado, away to Toronto, away to LAFC, and then back home to Inter Miami to finish this block of games off before Leagues Cup, and you end up 4-1, and you win the games that you should be winning. San Jose was the bounce back. Colorado, Toronto, and Inter Miami, yes, they are 3 of the worst teams in the league, and that's what we said at the time, is we started to look ahead and say, okay, we can think about what we need to do to make the playoffs. And it's winning these games. It's showing that no matter if you're without one or both of your designated players, if you can perform with the roster that you have against the teams that you should beat regularly, you're going to be positioning yourself and picking up much needed points going into the post-Leagues Cup break. So seeing this rotated roster, which added to the word that Lutz despises the most, depth, it provides City with every single thing that they needed to be confident in surviving the throes of summer. If you can have a Sam Adeniran-led team when you've already succeeded with Klaus, you've already succeeded with Nico Gioacchini, perform the way that they did for this block, anything's possible. What did you see, Phil?
Yeah, you hear it a million times, like a good team finds a way to win, and it's not always pretty. And I think this block, shows that to some extent, but it shows this like second option, this way, that we may not have as pretty of goals. We may have to like blood and guts our way through it to some degree. We don't have these beautiful Leuven goals, but we are winning. We are finding a way. And this is like cementing that blue collar work ethic style team. This is where we show that deep down thing that we're able to pull up and become something when the opponent thinks we're down and dusted. So, this was like showing, I think, who they are long term. This team is not always going to be hot. This team's not always going to have a star-studded roster. There's going to be injuries. And I think this shows that Bradley Carnell and again, listening to all these City Voice episodes, we're hearing the camaraderie, the fact that they all enjoy each other's company, that they do want to fight for each other and for the fans, right? I do think the fans have a big play in a block like this as well. And so, just all of those things combined, to me, this is like the identity of St. Louis shining, because like I said, we're not always going to have those players, but there is something, this deep, dark thing that St. Louis might be able to grab from down below and eke out some wins.
Santi.
Yeah. So, obviously when I saw the lineup against San Jose, I was a little worried, especially Adeniran starting. He had just been recalled, but yeah, that was the turnaround point to me, and just a new lineup. Like you had a bunch of guys who previous year winning in MLS Next Pro or USL Championship, and they got the job done. And I just saw the comment from our friend Chris Gebhardt that City never dropped below third. That's correct. And after that win against San Jose, it took possession of first place until the end of the season. So so that was an statement win for that lineup that was there, and that's when the team the doubts about depth like kind of went away, because you could win with different guys, and just winning the games you had to win against Colorado, against Miami, against Toronto, even competing against LAFC for 65, 70 minutes with a rotated lineup. That was also good to see. So great finish of that first part of the season before the Leagues Cup break.
You're listening to us on the Big 550 KTRS. We are Flyover Footy, recapping the 2023 inaugural St. Louis City SC season. And the next step in the season is the Leagues Cup break, which I, again, am good with skipping entirely over because it was not memorable in the slightest, from being from the fan base of Club America coming in and from them dominating us on our home turf to going to Columbus, almost not even getting that game in with the weather delay that occurred there. I know there's a slew of City fans there who are just struggling in the concourse. It was a bad performance on the field. We were bounced. We took a break. And then we bounced back to another block. In the way we have this written out, it's our second to last block of games. It was a win-loss. The first time all season that we had gone back and forth between wins and losses like this. It was a 6-3 drubbing of Austin at home. It was a 2-1 loss away to Orlando. It was a 2-1 win against FC Dallas, and then a 2-1 loss against Sporting KC in Kansas on that Labor Day match. And I know of these games, the one that gives me the most encouragement looking back on it is FC Dallas. It was a very weird game because they went down a man early. And so they were in the lowest of blocks. And this was our opportunity to say, yeah, they might be down, but they're forcing us into possession to the point where we ended the game with 64% possession. And we were still able to find a way to break through and score 2 goals late. So that ability for them to continue to fight was shown in spades. That was the Anthony Marcanic goal game. That was the Nupi Thorson goal game. So we're getting our reinforcements in. The transfers that come in at the window, they get an opportunity to come in and score at the 82nd, 85th minute of that FC Dallas game. Besides the goals that were rained on by Austin to start off the post-Leagues Cup break or stretch of matches, I think that was the most exciting thing to see the newbies score against FC Dallas, figure out a way to win with possession. And then it just, the block didn't end well with Sporting KC, and that I think is pretty fresh, even that Labor Day matchup. So, Phil, how did you see the series of games post Leagues Cup?
I just see this as a continuation of what you said about the ebb and flow, that there will be highs and lows. That I don't think St. Louis looked bad in any of these games. I do think that Orlando, that game was a wake-up call for me where I was like, oh, Orlando is good. And I think they're showing their talent in the playoffs here as well. Bouncing Nashville, I think, right?
Yes.
Nashville. So, I think they looked really good doing it and pretty solid and veteran again. They just seem like such a veteran team to me. And so the Sporting KC game also doesn't quite bother me. I mean, it hurt me emotionally. But
emotional damage.
Emotional damage, exactly. But, there were some weird calls. I would say the teams looked relatively even in this one. So I wasn't fretting that one. This whole thing, again, ebbs and flows, some losses, some wins. I felt fine about it.
Santi?
Yeah, some besides that Austin game that had a lot of goals, the other games were really close, and you could see like teams starting to fight for playoff spots, and every game started to feel like a playoff game. And to me, the highlight, even though the team lost, was that game against Sporting KC at Sporting KC. Like just seeing all the St. Louis fans, how loud they were, and it felt like a home game. And when I had the opportunity to ask different players about it, they were really happy with the support and seeing so many fans. So that was a great moment.
And then as we transition to the last block, it was the first time again all season long, after surviving everything that we had multiple streaks that we hadn't experienced before. Up until this block of games, we had only drawn 2 games all season. Suddenly we go back to back to back draws, away to LA Galaxy 2-2, away to Houston Dynamo 1-1, back home LAFC. We go away to Minnesota United, and this was an exciting one. I was there for this one. It was a 2-1 win with, again, a bit of a rotated lineup and some Klaus, Leuven, AZ Jackson action in the second half. A 4-1 win at home against Sporting KC, and then the wheels kind of start to come off for the last time. The Vancouver loss, the massive breaks and different international windows, the 2.5 weeks between matches, deadline day decision day loss to Seattle, and then the playoffs. So I have this block, guys, as the streaks to end the season. And I see it as a way St. Louis still picked up points as we finished the season. So there's a lot of conversation about how they ended the season, how they regressed as compared to where they started off with. But if you look at the last block and this block, we're still talking about taking points from all but 4 of these last regular season matches. We did what we need to do to wrap up the conference early, for better or for worse. And so we did what we needed to do to finish this thing off, get ourselves in the best position to go into the playoffs. The scheduling, they wasn't friendly to us. The ability for us to handle these last couple games, Vancouver, Seattle, Sporting, with the playoff teams that they were, it didn't end well. But I don't think that can take away from some of the positives that we saw late in the season, able to compete away against LA, able to compete away against Houston, and then winning away against Minnesota, and also winning home against Sporting. These are things that we ended the season with that I think are being overlooked because of the way the last couple of games went.
Yeah, I agree that they're overlooked. And you look at the draws and you look at the 2 wins that you just listed, and nothing to be embarrassed about there. I don't think even the LAFC loss or draw at home, tough team. I guess it's like the loss of momentum felt like a thing during this stage. And I don't know if that just never went away. I don't know. I'm just most confused about this block. When you pair it with the playoffs, it's like we have 1 year of examples to decide what this means, right? Yep. And it's just, in my opinion, like, you can't make a decision. You can use punditry to say certain things, and I think that's fine. Some of them will be right, some of us will be wrong. But when you pair this with the playoffs, the loss of momentum, I guess the one thought that haunts me just a little bit is, like, will this be this end of the season slump? Will this become a St. Louis City thing? And will it be a St. Louis City thing perhaps to really fly in the beginning of the season? Is this just an opponent thing? I guess what I'm getting at here is, like, this block is nothing but question marks to me. But I would say that none of it is proof of what we are and who we are. And I think some people would disagree with me on that. But I would say, I think the team comes out of this unscathed because of what a great season it was. All the weird dynamics of that last block. I don't know. A lot of question marks, but again, I want to say that I don't think there's any proof that it's over for us, or that we'll never be this good again, or never have this season again.
How'd you see it, Santi?
Yeah, so echoing what Phil said, question marks because you lost the last 4 games. But if you go back to the beginning of this blog, the team had a 5-game undefeated streak, which is something it didn't have since the beginning of the season.
That's the kind of thing that keeps you at the top. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So and it competed like a tie against Houston at Houston. Even the game against LAFC here at City Park was very competitive. Probably one of the most entertaining scoreless games I have had a chance to attend. But then you get to that last 2 games of the season, and at that point I saw it like, okay, this is the loss against Vancouver. I was like, this is a good loss because you don't want to go into the playoffs undefeated and at a high point. So I was like, okay, the team will bounce back against Seattle, and things didn't go our way and ended up not getting the points. And then at that point, I was a little concerned, but still had hopes. Okay, the team will figure it out against Sporting KC. Didn't happen. So yeah, some question marks. But I take the positives from what the team did the whole year, and I'm sure Carnell, his staff, and the players will have good lessons from this and be ready for next season.
And we're just about out of time on the Big 550 KTRS, but I'll leave us with this. Don't let the last couple of games, the last 4 games in totality, cloud the vision of not only this entire season, but also how St. Louis was able to withstand a lot in the back half of the season. The narrative that we regressed on the entire back half of the season, I think is patently false, because you're seeing those second times playing teams that we mentioned earlier, like Portland and Real Salt Lake. Well, the second time we played LA Galaxy, we drew them. Second time we played Houston Dynamo, we beat them the first time, we drew them away the second time. We beat Minnesota United the second time we played them. Sporting KC was a team that we played 5 times this year. And when I asked Roman Berkey about that, he said it was absurd. The amount of times you play one single team 4 times in a 2-month stretch, that's atrocious. And so that's another abnormality that I think clouds a little bit of this entire narrative. And I look at City surviving the ebbs and flows of the season. Like you said, Phil, the question is going to be, do we start off hot next year? If not, how can we find something to strive for to go from the bottom and have those ebbs and flows and finish strong in that scenario? So there's definitely a lot unknown, unproven in the consistency year over year, obviously. But from how we can manage an MLS season, there's so many positives that you have to take away from this system. The players who are returning, who are going to be, I think, at about 20 plus players, around 20 players, 15 to 20 who are returning next year. And they know the system. They know the struggles of MLS now. And we're going to see how they respond. So, guys, final thoughts. Phil.
Oh, just so proud of this team and so proud of this season. I consider myself so lucky to see the expansion season for St. Louis, my home city, the city that's always deserved soccer and finally got it. And, to experience it and for it to be as good as it was. I mean, we're spoiled rotten, guys. And to have mostly so to have gotten the owner that we got and the way that she's gone about things, my goodness, we're so spoiled.
Santi, final thought.
Yeah, just to have an inaugural season with so many historic moments, so many records, so many memories. And yeah, it didn't end the way we wanted it and the way we started to expect it to go as the season went by. And the team, I just said that they took first place June 24 after beating San Jose. And all the way to October 21st, they were still first. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that was great to see. And I never imagined having a season like this, despite exiting the playoffs so early. I wouldn't change it for anything.
Yeah. And that's all the time we have. Thank you for joining us here on Flyover Footy on the Big 550 KTRS. If you are interested in more, we're going to go deep in our wind down on our podcast version. So stick around or tune in to our podcast at anywhere you can get them, Apple or Spotify. My name is Matt Baker for Flyover Footy. Thanks for joining us, and we'll talk to you later.
Good job, Matt.
I think I took us long.
I forgot to give you more updates. I'm so sorry. We went to 45, and I want to say either last week or the week before was 47. So
okay.
Sweet. So we do have news to get into on the wind down, and then the Leuven quote, and then I think it'd be fun to spitball some of our top players and moments of the year after we get our drinks.
Cool.
Yeah,
that's good.
Sweet.
Check it out, Matt.
Hey.
Told you I
Twins.
got a box. I'm going camping this weekend, so I might take the whole thing again down there.
Nice. That's a good one. It's an easy drinking one.
It is.
All right, Phil, you get to take this one.
Okay, sounds good. Matt, you didn't quite get to talk about the playoffs or your final thoughts on the season. Do you want to throw that in anywhere, or do you think we'll cover
No,
it?
I got enough in. It's fine.
Okay, cool. All right, well, here we go. Welcome, everyone, to the Wind Down. The live stream knows it, but I'll repeat it for the podcast. We got twin O'Cats here from Urban Chestnut.
I didn't get the memo.
Matt encouraged me to get it, and it's my favorite. It's my favorite. Oktoberfest.
O'Cats for the off-season edition of the Wind Down. Which I think let's start off a little different than we do normally in the Wind Down, because we do have some news that happened this week to touch on before getting into some fun stuff about some of the bigger things this season. The obvious big one is that Roman Berkey is our 2023 MLS Goalkeeper of the Year, beating out the other two front runners, Roman Celentano from Cincinnati and Pedro Galisi from Orlando City. But I mean, can you even call it a final three, guys, when Roman Berkey gets 60% of the player vote, 70% of the club vote, and 71% of the media vote? The other closest are Celentano with 6%, 5%, 3%, Galisi with 3%, 7%, and 4%. This was an absolute trouncing of the entire competition by Berkey.
I think you should go into your stats as well, Matt, if you don't mind.
Yeah. So there's the obvious, you can call them trolls. You don't have to, but you could, from fans of other clubs, maybe the more nicer way to put it, who were saying, Roman Berkey only had 8 clean sheets. Roman Berkey had one of the higher goals against. And then you take 5 seconds to Google what are some good individual goalkeeper stats to show actual individual performances. And you come across some advanced stats like the post-shot expected goals minus goals allowed, which basically says after how likely it is the goalkeeper is to save a shot. So it talks about the expected goals after the player shoots it, taking into consideration not just like player where they are on the field, but where they're aiming the ball, kind of where the ball is in traffic, a lot of different variables that gets down to the individual goalkeeper's skill and not necessarily the team-based approach of getting a clean sheet or goals against. And per FBref, Roman Berkey is the leader in the league in this post-shot expected goals minus goals allowed, the difference in how many goals he actually allowed versus what he was expected to, and was able to prevent himself with a 9.1, plus 9.1 in that. The higher the number, the better you are, and a better indication of individual goalkeeper skill. The next highest was Daniel from San Jose with plus 7.3. Georgi Petrovic had 6. Martin Pace got 4.6. If you look at the other 3 finalists, or the other 2 finalists rather, Roman Celentano and Pedro Galisi. Galisi had plus 1.4 in the post-shot expected goals minus goals allowed. Roman Celentano plus 0.3. Basically even. And so this number talks about individual shot stopping ability, right? But that's not Roman Berkey's only skill. That's not the only thing that he's good at. So you take those numbers and you look at other things like his distribution, his ability to defend more than just his line. And this didn't get as much love on Twitter, but Roman Berkey was 3rd in the league in completed launched balls over 40 yards, indicating such a high level of distribution. And he was 4th in defensive actions outside of his penalty area. The kicker on both of those is if you take those 3 stats, the post-shot expected goals minus goals allowed, the distribution, accurate distribution over 40 yards, and the defensive actions outside your penalty box, take all 3 of those. The only players above Berkey in the launch balls and the defensive actions had either a 0 or a negative post-shot expected goals minus goals allowed. And Berkey led the league in that stat. I mean, we're talking about the total package in the ability to, as an individual shot stopper, all other things being even as far as your team's defensive prowess, the team's number of shots allowed, your ability to distribute at such a high level, and your ability to defend more than just your line, go out into space and get the ball. And we know how adept Berkey is at all those things. That's why cumulatively you can explain easily why the media, the clubs, and the players all saw. You're looking at the eye level, the eye test from the players type of a thing, but also the analytics that the media provides and that the clubs provide. It all adds up to the no-brainer that we saw from the vote.
And there is, on top of those stats, there's another underlying stat that was in that Athletic article, breaking down the effectiveness of every team's designated players.
Yep.
And, he added in the St. Louis paragraph that if Berkey was considered a DP for St. Louis, that his goals added would put us miles above everyone else in that category. So that also, helps prove your point there. Santiago, I'd love to hear your thoughts on Berkey. We're getting some receipts from FC Cincinnati pundits, and that was fun to see this week. But Santiago, I give you permission to talk about the goalkeeper and the cute puppy in this category here, if you'd like.
What a great season by Roman Berkey. The thing that would have been the cherry on the top of all of this would have been if he had gotten an assist. There were a couple of plays where he had some really good passes and could have ended on a goal, but no, I loved what I saw from him. Matt talked about the defensive actions outside of the box. He has a great vision for what's going on. Reads the plays really well, and he was very successful in those defensive actions. At the beginning of the season, the last preseason game, that was a closed doors game, but I had a chance to attend. And I don't remember if we talked about this or not, but he had a couple of defensive actions outside the box where he used his head. And I was like, oh my God, we're gonna be down for a show here. And I remember asking Bradley Carnell about it. I was like, yeah, you're gonna see things like that the whole season, because that's what we need from him and the way he plays. But yeah, it was a great season for him. And I have mentioned this on the pod. When he was signed, I was a little skeptical. I was like, well, he hasn't played in a year, and yeah, he had some minutes with CD2.
Mm-hmm.
But I was thinking, I don't know, like, is he gonna be able to get back to his level, the level he had at Borussia Dortmund, or are we gonna have issues at the goalkeeping position? But no, he got better every week, and it was just a great season. And yeah, since Phil gave me permission, yeah, so we have a puppy. Her name is Berkey. We told with different names, but the one that ended up sticking was Berkey. So sometimes it feels weird, like I'm in the middle of the day here working and I have to yell Berkey. No, it's so weird, but at the same time it's funny. But no, great season by Berkey, and we have our own Berkey.
Love it. Both good-looking beings. Let's talk about this final press conference. And while we're at it, I do want to say it was a lovely goodbye video, a lovely thank you video that they posted from the players. So again, creative department doing a wonderful job there. But this final press conference, I didn't realize we were going to get did we get every player? Practically every player.
Double-digit players.
Yeah, yes. Very good amount.
And so much information, so much good opinions, so many good behind the scenes kind of stuff. This is the kind of stuff I've been wondering all season. They really nailed some things down.
Yeah, it really felt like, I've said this multiple times, last day of school vibes, where everybody's just showing in. They're showing up with street clothes, just like they're literally getting ready to walk out the door for the last time for a summer, or in this case, winter break. And everybody was just very jovial, very lighthearted. They're willing to open up a little bit more. And the tone was set by Lutz and Bradley sitting next to each other, answering questions, going into just an array of topics. And all the players really seemed they were reminiscing in a very positive manner, but everybody had this inkling of, we know it ended less than what we wanted. Like it was a poor ending, but that can't diminish the entire season. That was one of the big takeaways. I tried to tweet out as many different quotes as I can from each one of the players, from Lutz and Bradley. I know Justin Horniker did as well. So if you want more details on some of the quotes, check out my Twitter, check out Justin Horniker's Twitter, and then check out the City YouTube page, because they posted the press conference in full. If you've got 3 hours to kill, it's it's not a bad watch, and
it's worth it.
Yeah, I fully think it's worth it. You know, you understood a lot more about the players and their mindsets when you hear them break certain things down and reflect in this manner, where they don't have to worry about the next game yet. They don't have to worry about going back to practice. They're letting themselves mentally deload, and it was good to see. Tim Parker even said very clearly, you know, as a leader, I'm telling these guys, you need breaks. You need a mental rest. You need to unwind, just unplug. And because we're coming back strong. And one of the questions is, people from fans and everybody asked is, when are they coming back? Because we know that CONCACAF Champions Cup starts the beginning of February. We will be playing competitive matches throughout the month of February, and then starting MLS play, presumably at the end of February still. But we know that we're going to Coachella or Goldchella again in February as well. So St. Louis City will have a presence there in February. A lot of things going to start ramping up, but the players really have time off until after the holidays. That's when everybody's going to get going back again. So this will be a period where we're still going to be doing the pod, talking about the roster and building and different rules and dates throughout the offseason calendar year. And any news that breaks, we're still going to be here, but the players are unwinding. You know, we'll do what we can to touch base with them and see what they're up to. But a lot of them have left already. We knew Jabulu Blom went to South Africa yesterday. He, in fact, was early on the press conference because he had a 1:00 flight to Johannesburg. Yes. So he's out. We've heard that, you know, Berkey, Klaus, Leuven, a lot of guys are going home. They're just getting back to families, to friends, to other areas of the world, South America, Europe, wherever it is. And they're unplugging, except for Nico Gioacchini, potentially, who of all the players said how much Nico and Leuven spoke about how much they loved St. Louis and the state of Missouri and different things like that, the area. And Nico went so far as to say he loves it so much, he's looking to buy a place in St. Louis now.
It's pretty cool.
We could basically think of him as a homegrown here pretty soon, the way he's talking.
Homegrown? What?
Why not? Nico Gioacchini, you know, we're taking him Kansas City. They took enough of our guys before we had a team that, you know, we're claiming Nico now.
That was really going to get booed.
Payback.
I love it. But no, it was a good time, and it was really kind of a period at the end of the sentence of the season, and it was a good finish. It was a lot to just debrief with everybody and to carry forward into the offseason.
A lot of candor. That was my favorite part. Santiago, what did you think about this one?
Yeah, no, it was a great event. Getting to hear everybody's like final thoughts, and there were some interesting quotes. But yeah, everybody was in a good mood. I honestly didn't think it was gonna last 3 hours, but every player sat down. Some for more than 10 minutes, but most of them reached the 10-minute mark, and good conversations, good insight. But to me, the one thing that was really positive was just the love they have for the city, and how much they like the fans and the support, and just they know that it didn't end in a good note, and they were disappointed, and it will be a good motivation for 2024. So yeah, time for a break, and it's gonna be a short one, just because with CONCACAF Champions Cup, the preseason will probably start a little earlier than last year.
Yeah, I hope they rest up. One guy that may not rest up as much as the others, though, I think he's perfectly happy for it. John Bell getting called up to Jamaica, and I had totally forgotten that he was
out of
eligible.
Nowhere.
Yeah, I had no idea.
I knew that he was eligible for Jamaica, but this is super cool for him. And, you know, he could not have been happy with the amount of minutes he got this year. And I really think this will help his profile, because you look at like someone like Damian Lowe is a USL legend as far as center backing in the USL, but playing with Philadelphia Union as a starter, in the playoffs right now, looking pretty good. To have John Bell perhaps next to a guy like that and playing well with all of the Premier League players that they have now that have come into the squad. Hopefully this helps him out, and maybe he gets more minutes with us. Maybe he goes somewhere else and becomes a starter, or, the third center back somewhere. Either way, I was so happy for him and so happy to see this.
He never really got going with the team. It always seemed like he was a little further back in the depth chart. He didn't have very many opportunities to start with St. Louis City. He saw some time with City 2 and Next Pro playing here and there, but his time with City was really he was able to play some in the Open Cup. He played, like I said, in Next Pro. He did start. I think the highlight of his year might have been that Minnesota game, the second time we played them in September, going to Minnesota. He started, played 74 minutes, and helped our team stay in that 2-1 win. So that was, I think, a highlight for him. But
I don't think he looked bad in that game either. Like,
No.
Didn't we all agree that he looked fine?
Yeah, I thought he looked just fine.
No, the few minutes, I think he was 3 stars against Minnesota, against LAFC, and he also started one in Leagues Cup. It must have been against Columbus.
Yeah.
But he looked good in those games. It's just that center back position had a lot of competition, and he obviously beginning of the season he was recovering from an injury, so I think that set him back a little bit.
And Lucas Bartlett was signed because he had that injury, I think.
Yeah.
Right? And not just Nilsson, but that's part of the explanation for the center back depth is Lucas Bartlett in a way that you could say some other, like Anthony Marcanic did halfway during the year, where he came on and he maybe was supposed to be a depth piece to start, and then he just proved himself, won that internal competition, and suddenly Lucas Bartlett is starting in that first U.S. Open Cup game against Omaha right alongside Josh Yarrow, and John Bell ends up being a sub, only playing 19 minutes. That was his first appearance as a sub in the U.S. Open Cup game. And that tells you, based on how we prioritize the U.S. Open Cup this year, where his spot is on the depth chart, and it never really changed throughout the year. He's a player who I'm going to be interested in this offseason, whether or not we pick up his option. And it wouldn't surprise me one way or another. I know he has talent. He was beloved in New England. I remember specifically a fan video from New England when he was drafted. This fan was, it might have been tongue in cheek, but he was absolutely devastated.
It was not.
Okay. Do you guys remember it too?
I remember it.
It was awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that was the introduction we had to him, but we never really got a chance to see it. And I wouldn't mind if Bell stuck around, if we re-upped his contract and he stayed with us and maybe fought to get more minutes. I think a healthy John Bell going into next year could be valuable at minimum as a rotational player.
I completely agree. We'll see what happens there. Matt, this next one, I'm gonna send it straight to you. MLS playoff update.
Some people might care still about the MLS Cup playoffs and where they are. Right now, we're in we're almost in an international break. Cincinnati and Philadelphia have moved on to the semifinals in the East. We are awaiting the results of Columbus, Atlanta, and we know Orlando has moved on to defeat after defeating Nashville. So Orlando, Cincinnati, and Philadelphia are 3 of the 4 in the East. We have Sporting in the West. They will play the winner of Houston, Real Salt Lake. LAFC has defeated Vancouver. They'll move on to play the winner of Seattle, Dallas. So we don't know a whole lot yet. I mean, there's still a long way to go. MLS Cup itself isn't for another month. It's 1 month from today as we're recording this, I believe, December 9th, if I recall.
Yep.
So, we have an international break that's going to occur between this coming weekend and Thanksgiving. So no matches. The next semifinals will pick up on November 25th. It's the Saturday after Thanksgiving. So a huge break without soccer, and then it just picks up and ramps up from there. So whenever we have future episodes, we'll touch on it. But I'm just watching it as a neutral, casual fan right now because I have no rooting interests. If I had to make a guess on what I wanted to see, or rather if I had to say what I wanted to see, I wouldn't mind if Philadelphia beat Cincinnati. I wouldn't mind if the winner of Columbus, Atlanta moved on. I think that would be fun to see. Hell is Real would be fun to see in the Eastern Conference Final. But if Cincinnati were to stumble, I would not shed a tear. I don't really have a dog in the fight in the West outside of – I'm torn in 2 regards. So here's the St. Louis fan in me saying, I hope SKC gets just annihilated when they play the winner of Houston or Real Salt Lake. But it would say more reflectively about City if
Yes.
SKC is able to go further. So we don't have that piling on of we were bounced back to back by a team that was eliminated quickly thereafter. So it's tough to say which one as a City fan you really want more outside of just the hatred a lot of people have for SKC, which I'm there, but I don't know what to think on that.
I am on that boat that it will be good if Sporting KC keeps advancing, just because it will be one of those things that, they beat City, but they beat other teams and showed that they were in a great part of the season for them and took advantage of the momentum and made it far.
Mm-hmm.
If they lose, it's going to be that narrative, we lost to Sporting KC, that then didn't do anything else in the playoffs. So part of me wants Sporting KC to do well, but please don't do that well. Don't win the cup, because then we will all be very disappointed and sad. But
that far. That far. You know, honestly, as a City fan, the best thing to do regarding SKC might just to be don't say anything.
Right.
Don't give them the satisfaction one way or another of saying we hope you lose, and then if they win, they have yet something else. Don't say you hope they go all the way, because then you're a City fan who lost, who has to root for Case. Like, there's no win. Like, let's just talk about ourselves and focus on hating on Cincinnati.
I mentioned those Brian Weigel receipts earlier, and it's like, why did he say that? Because it's in writing, you know, like,
and he called us STLFC
when we've had, I know. Yeah.
Oh yeah. I noticed that.
But, you know, we've had our moments. You know, Matt and I both got real emotional during the game for the SKC game against Matt Doyle. But, like, we've all, like, made little tiny missteps throughout the season on Twitter. But first of all, we delete those every time. We've all done it, right? And then next of all, like, we don't talk crap on people. It's just not our style. I don't know if that's, like, a St. Louis thing or what. But, like, I don't get that. He should have deleted it, number one. Number two, why do you even say it? It's very strange.
There was a lot of that going around, and that was a deserved dunking on anybody who heavily, not just discounted, but flat out said this roster has no chance of succeeding. Like, they are being put together like a 2019 FC Cincinnati. If you say something like that and you're leaving that post up, then you're leaving yourself open for everything you get, because there's no reason to say that other than just to try to spark some kind of response.
I guess I give him some props for self-deprecation. You get some points there for that one, but
that's fair. He owned it today.
He did. Let's talk about Leuven's quote. This is kind of like, I would say this is the number one thing that fans responded to in all 3 hours of this press conference. It's a fun one. I would even say, if we want to pat ourselves on the back, this has been a topic for us throughout the entire season. The second Leuven played I remember talking about this in preseason.
Yeah.
So go ahead, Matt.
When he had the number 10, that was the thing that sparked it all. It's because we knew when he was signed that he wasn't a playmaking number 10. That's not where we expect him to be. It was said multiple times when he was signed that he was a box-to-box midfielder. And so we plug the 8. We plug him at the 8. So we're putting together rosters and lineups and formations at the beginning of the season. It's Blom at the 6. It's Leuven at the 8. Whether you put them next to each other, whatever formation, you can see the spine progress from Blom to Leuven to insert 10 here to Klaus. But what we saw was just Leuven all over the place all season long. And it was partially because of circumstances and who was playing around him, the absence, the presence of Jabulo Blom, the absence or presence of a true number 10, whether it's Vasilev, AZ Jackson, Tomas Ostrak, and then everything that started happening with Klaus and Gioacchini and what Leuven needed to do. I will say, because we have consistently talked about this, I have to, in a small way, I don't usually do this, but I'll toot my own horn. And this was my question that I asked him in the press conference to try and understand. And I was hoping that he would go this deep into it to understand what his thoughts were. We didn't go deep into individual issues and conversations in the KTRS part, but this was a persistent conversation about Edu Leuven and whether he was missing a step after he came back from injury from his quad, what the deal was with him just missing for large portions of the game. in multiple games. And so as I read, I'm going to read this full quote from Löwen because I transcribed it. I wanted to get the full thing out there. As I read this, be thinking back into some of the previous games and emotions that you felt about seeing Löwen play the left mid of a diamond, seeing him play the double pivot with Blom, seeing him play as a 10 in a few games, and just remember what he was doing in those games and how successful you recall him being. Because Löwen definitely has thoughts himself. He said, quote, "I would say I preferred the 6 the most, to play with 2 6s. I think the 8 in some things, there were misunderstandings on my end where I interpreted the position differently, where it was very wide because I didn't receive as many balls in the center of the field. I tried to find the pockets, but in the style we play, it's not as easy. I think in the 10, there were some games I felt I couldn't get as much into the game because I had to wait for many balls. On the 6, I can create more. And where teams were making it good, they didn't allow me to get into spots, and I was a little bit wasted. At the end of the day, the coach wanted to give me a lot of freedom in these positions, and I think that's what he did. So I appreciate that he gave me the freedom, and I don't have to be stubborn in this one position, but I can float around everywhere kind of. In many things, I can do better next year to interpret those positions even better, and the team can get me into better positions as well. End of the day, with 2 6s, I think it worked out often very well, but as an 8 at the end of the season, there were good performances, I would say." So Löwen clearly a fan of the creativity he perceives as being a double pivot to Blom and able to do more with the ball in more space, which is when I think of a double pivot, I don't necessarily think of the freedom you have in all of that space, but he's right. You have more of the field in front of you. You have a wider vision to project where you can send the ball and how to distribute it, even if you're not being tasked with playmaking in the final third to score a goal. He said himself that you could kind of tell he felt hamstrung as a 10 with, you can call a 10 a creative playmaker, but he didn't have the ability to maneuver in space and create in that sense. So he couldn't get into the game. He was waiting for many balls. So in a lot of the games, I remember Löwen at the 10 or even as a left mid, he wasn't getting a lot of distribution to him. He wasn't receiving the ball in places where he could really do a whole lot. And we didn't have connection in our midfield. So the games where he would disappear, I always perceived it as there's a lack of connection between our lines. We can't connect Blom to the other midfielders. We can't connect our back line to our central mids, to our attackers. And hearing Löwen describe a lot of his misunderstandings where he's interpreting the 8 differently than what Carnell intends. And he's going out very wide because he didn't get as many balls center, those kinds of things. It really explains a lot of what we've been seeing this entire year.
What do you think, Santiago?
Yeah, it was great to get that insight from him. I was surprised at the beginning when he said his preferred position was the 6, but as he explained it and explained some of the challenges playing as a number 8 or even as a number 10, it started to make sense. And I went back and looked at the announcement when he was signed, and yeah, it says that he is a defensive midfielder. So, but yeah, I think the way he talks about it, like a double pivot, but you still have the whole field, and then you have some kind of freedom to build plays. It makes sense because between him and Blom, they can do great things defensively, and once you recover the ball, then Löwen has all that space to build. So yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing how this will evolve and what the team will do next year. But I like what he said about the coach giving him freedom.
Me too.
Even when he was the 6, the 10, or the 8. So I think the team and him will build from this, and he will come back better as a better player next year.
Yeah, I don't think just some alternative translations of some of this. Like, I love that he said that the coach gave him freedom, as you said there, Santiago, because I don't want everyone to read this necessarily as like throwing Carnell under the bus. Like, he played me at the 10 and I couldn't get the ball. I think it's more like no matter where I was, he actually gave me permission to find the ball wherever it is. So even when he was at the 10, it sounded like he wasn't hamstrung per se. But you know, it sounds like through the natural play of this style or even this combination of players, he just for some reason found that if he was in a certain place in the formation, he was able to get on the ball more. And I think we could all agree that Leuven is probably our best player. And I mean, on the field at least. And the more he gets the ball, the better on that one. And I think the last thing, as we kind of always tend to beat this horse to death, but everyone asks all the time anyway, so I'm going to go ahead and say it. I think like that last block of games that we saw, we kind of saw AZ stop being quite as effective somehow. And I don't know if that was just teams adjusting. The formation, I think, was a good shout on whether we had two strikers or not. Matt mentioned connecting the lines.
Yep.
Leuven even mentioned how he wasn't able to get on the ball, and how many times did we see AZ dropping all the way down into the 6th position so he could finally get the ball and carry it forward.
Yeah.
We saw it throughout the season, and at the end he wasn't able to kind of be as effective. And I just wonder if it's the system. Like, we're never going to have that playmaking 10 that's like crazy. And I think that's fine in modern soccer. I'm totally fine with that. But then my other thought is, in the off season, when we go over our list of needs and depth, I cannot help but think about what, for a while I was saying we need a more goal dangerous winger every once in a while as a break from just our pure pressing style wingers. But maybe just a goal dangerous 10 would be that perfect bridge between allowing Leuven to play where he needs to play, having a 10 up top who can be goal dangerous and carry the ball forward no matter whether he's getting the ball or not. Can we work a system around someone because they're that good? Just thoughts. Like, now I'm like really on board with either a DP or a U22 initiative. U22 initiative is exactly what I'm really hoping for a 10 that's goal dangerous and can improve this situation that Leuven was finding problematic.
Well, I know it's Leuven that we're focusing on here, but because your point is, I think I'm agreeing with you, Phil, in the sense of Leuven is probably our best overall player on the field. But the conversation we're having here can be compared to Indiana Vassilev, who we talked about on the KTRS portion, who started the season playing as a 6, and he's played as a wide mid. He's played as a 10. I think there was even one game where he was as high as you could call a second striker when he needed to be. He played all over the field too, but the comparison I want to make is to your point of Bradley Carnell asking Leuven to do certain things and giving him the freedom to move around. And that's kind of what he did for Indy. It's you're putting players who you know are just good footballers on the field in spots that you need them to play in your system. So if you're looking at your holistic lineup and you're saying, I'm looking back early in the season, I'm looking back at that Charlotte game the Portland game, the very first Portland game where we ran a 4-2-3-1 and Leuven was our 10, Vassilev and Perez were our double pivot. Mm-hmm. That's the kind of thing we did early in the season. And those are the evolutions that we have where it's not just Leuven who's moving around the midfield, but it's everybody but Jabulu Blom basically is just moving around in different parts of the midfield to try and find areas that they're most successful in. And this system is all about a puzzle. And you're saying you have certain players who they're the best in certain spots. Jabulu Blom is the only player right now that I would peg as in our midfield. You know where he's going to be the entire time. He is the 6. He doesn't play anywhere else. He's our destroyer. That's what he does. In the midfield elsewhere, you have Indiana Vassilev, you have Edu Leuven, Tomas Ostrak, Jared Stroud. All of these players can play just about any position. Rasmus Alm might be the only exception where he's going to be on the right side or a second striker on the right at all times. He plays the right side of the field. Everybody else is fluid, and Carnell has shown throughout this year that he's willing to move players front and back, left and right, depending on how they fit in this bigger puzzle. And that's probably something that we're going to see going into next year as well.
Question for you guys. Do you ever find it strange that Indy never played the 10 again after that stretch of like successful games at the 10? Or did I forget about a game maybe he struggled at the 10?
No, I probably need to look through the match notes, but I remember there being, and it's that one block of games, the FC Dallas Galaxy, Nashville, Real Salt Lake, because between the 3-game win streak and the San Jose game, when AZ got his chance, he didn't let go of it, and AZ was our 10. I think Indy took the 10 through the 3-game win streak because Carnell does that. He rides the hot hand and keeps players in positions if they're successful, and he'll ride those games, which I admire that respect for if he's going to change things up like he did in San Jose, keep with it. Don't go immediately back to your top 11 just because they had worked earlier in the season. But to that point, I think once Leuven went down, Vasilev had to drop back, and that's where he got out of the 10. So in a perfect world, Leuven stays healthy. Vasilev might end up continuing to play the 10 because Leuven is on the field in a defensive mid position, able to cover that field. This is an example of Vasilev moving where he needs to be. He's clearly at that point, and towards the end of the season even, a third option as a defensive midfielder. And so if Leuven or Blom needs out, Vasilev slides back into that position. And coupling that with AZ taking over the 10, you just don't see a lot of opportunity for Indy to own that position. Carnell used him a lot more on the wings than he did at the 10 after that.
And on top of that, we didn't see AZ in that last game, and they talked about specifically stretching the field. And to be honest, strangely, I thought Indy, even though he's been playing as a 6 half the year, was the best at stretching the field. And stretching the field typically, as you said, Matt, is Alm's job, and he's been out, right? And so, that's another puzzle piece that I think we can think about in the off season. Les Nico, that's the last thing I wanted to ask you guys about. Les Nico, after he went on that stretch and did what he needed to do for the team, I thought that was a little bit strange. None of these are critiques. It's just I'm pointing at things that happened throughout the season that I was like, that's interesting.
My thought on that, it mirrors my thought on a lot of other areas. Again, that flashpoint game of San Jose, where you bring Sam back and Sam has a brace, and then you continue with that same lineup, Colorado, Toronto, into that stretch where you're running Sam as your striker. Nico became a complement to Sam at that point. And both of them, Nico's coming off those strong games where he's the only player who scored the goals against LA Galaxy, Nashville, Real Salt Lake. And then in San Jose, it's Sam stepping in and doing the work. And so Sam doesn't leave the field. With that game, it was Sam and Alm at San Jose. So Nico didn't start it, but we ran a 2-striker, and that's where Alm was on the right side. That combination had a lot of potential, and I think they were extremely successful. So you're getting another hot striker. And so Carnell's riding Sam. As the season progresses and you see what Sam's capable of on the left side in stretching the field and taking 1v1s effectively, Klaus is your clear-cut number 9 when he's healthy. So when he comes back, the competition is for who's going to complement Klaus. Yeah. And it was Sam for good portions. And so Klaus never lost his spot when healthy. The question is who's going to complement him if we go 2 strikers, and if we don't go 2 strikers, then it's just Klaus. So that as opposed to reading too much into Nico, it's just a numbers game. It's a battle of who's going to complement Klaus when we need that, not who's going to push Klaus off of his pedestal, at least this season.
Yeah, it's just that competition for that second striker spot. And the other thing, Nico got a little bit unlucky. So he scored 2 goals against Austin when the team returned from that Leagues Cup break. Next game, he was against Orlando, and he got injured.
Yeah, that's true.
So he also missed some time there. And then Klaus was back, so Klaus was getting more minutes. So I think it's a combination of all those things. And Sam was also scoring goals. But I think having those 3 healthy at the same time, I think the team will have a lot of options. And then you add Rasmus Alm, it's another variable to that puzzle, and different things, different lineup, different combinations that the team can show. But yeah, I think he just got unlucky in that Orlando game. I felt really bad because it was like going back to playing his former team, and he couldn't do much just because of that injury.
Yeah, and when we're going to talk about the roster and projections, contracts, all that thing probably on next week's show, but I do think that's something to keep in mind is if you're looking at the transfer window that Billy and Chad definitely mentions opens in 52 days from when we're recording.
Yes, thank you.
If you're looking at the transfer window, if you're looking at who's coming back, think about everything that we've mentioned in this entire episode. And when they're healthy, the depth that we truly have in our attack and our midfield right now with running a 4-4-2 especially, we have a potential for Klaus, Sam, Nico, or Alm to all run those effectively. And they've shown throughout the season that they can do it. 2 deep in each one of those positions. If you have a 4-2-3-1, Alm out on the right, Klaus up top, and then you have Sam and Nico who can still, help in that scenario, assuming all four of them are coming back. There's also a lot of midfield options, and so I'm not saying we need, especially in the attack. I don't think we necessarily need massive reinforcements. We also have Knutby Thorson, who we're going to talk about in a minute, and there's a lot of existing options on our roster that we just need to get healthy and get rested and get ready to go for next year, because we're going to need them all in that fixture congestion we're going to have starting in February.
And I just quickly want to say that, like, once Sam came, I think Sam likes to stay high. He's best on the counterattack. That's obvious.
Yep.
And I think Klaus started dropping in more, and that's exactly the space that Nico likes to operate in as the second striker. So I thought that was maybe part of it as well. Let's finish this off. We got a few more topics to touch on before we close it out. Top 3 players of the year besides the awards finalists. I think that's a nice change there.
I took this from Phil when you and I were with Brendan earlier towards the end of the regular season on the Big 550 KTRS. We were with Brendan Weezy on the Soccer on the Loo show on Tuesday, and we were looking at some of these best players, favorite moments. I thought it'd be fun for us to look at it here with the caveat of your top 3 players in whatever criteria that you want to, but take the award finalists out of it. Take out Berkey, take out Leuven, and take out Parker, because their contributions and recognition throughout the season is obvious because they were nominated for goalkeeper, MVP, newcomer, and defender of the year. I wrote mine down, so I gave mine away, and I'll go first while you guys try to steal better options. And you can even use the same names. But I went with Klaus, Blom, and Stroud. Klaus is probably obvious in what his importance was, and we mentioned having to change entire systems because he was injured. Jabulu Blom, I hope, is apparent and obvious in the impact he had as the destroyer, as the 6, persistent throughout the year. Lutz referred to him at the beginning of the season when he was signed as the missing puzzle piece, and I think he showed himself in that regard throughout the year. I also do think there was a massive evolution in Blom's game as he became more acclimated, because he did, when he had the opportunity to talk to us, he mentioned multiple times how it was difficult early in the season to acclimate to a new country, a new culture, a lack of family, lack of friends, all of these things being away from home that we said were benefits to the rest of our international players from arriving last year. Blom didn't have that. He was the exact opposite. He was the player who is the quintessential MLS international signing in a window. And he had a difficult go of it. He was sick. He was injured. At one point he had COVID. At one point he had a groin injury. All these things were at the beginning of the season. And so looking at his season as a whole, we were different when Blom was in the lineup as our 6, undoubtedly to me. And then the last one is, I still don't know why this is such a polarizing player in some regards. I mean, I get it from his certain skills that he has and certain things that he shows. But Jared Stroud is one of my absolute top players of the year. Stats-wise, he mentioned it in his time that he had with us this week, that it was statistically his best season. From Red Bulls to Austin to St. Louis. He had 5 goals and 5 assists. He was one of just a handful of players who had 10 goals plus assists throughout the year, double digits. He was a consistent presence on the left or the right side throughout the year. He didn't play the full 90 often, but what he did was provide that physical presence in the midfield. He connected lines a lot. He sent a lot of crosses in. He wasn't great at 1v1s in winning the ball against players with his quickness. He had some errant passes throughout the year, but what he was able to do consistently in the midfield to help connect some of those lines, in a lot of the wins, he was one of our most effective players. And I felt like he was one of those, let's be honest, he's a Carnell guy. There's no other way around that. And it goes back to his time with New York Red Bulls. Our friend Jen Cease, who does announcing for Y98, she made note of the fact that Jared Stroud started to really get into form with the Red Bulls when Bradley Carnell took over as the interim coach. He was starting for the Red Bulls up until the playoffs when Carnell was their interim. Going into the playoffs, the Red Bulls removed that interim tag from Carnell. They hired, I don't know who they hired, but they hired whoever they did. It wasn't Struber, was it, in place of Carnell at that point? Anyway,
no. Was it Chris Armas, maybe?
No.
When they brought in the coach, Stroud was benched and the Red Bulls lost. Like, Stroud didn't get a chance to play in the playoffs, but he was a Carnell guy at that time. Stroud is a guy who thrives in this system. And there's a lot of questions from that I've seen on Facebook, on Twitter, Instagram, asking just how does Jared Stroud continue to find himself in this lineup? And yes, he does exactly what Carnell wants him to do. He's the physical presence. He does what he needs to do on the wings to keep the ball in dangerous spots. He does provide service to the box. He does a good job with the ball, putting it where it needs to be. But it's those quick moments, I think, that he has when it's these very, very quick decision-making opportunities where he's trying to out-dribble a player, he's trying to pass into no space. Sometimes that is where he ends up turning the ball over, but he's quick to recover. And I think consistently throughout the year, if you look at the number of games Jared Stroud was involved in, we won more than we lost. And he was one of our top goal contributing players for the entire season.
What do you think, Santi?
Yeah, statistically, yeah, he's one of the contributors on the team, and yeah, he has great attributes. But yeah, Matt, when you mention like the errant passes and the 1v1, I think those are some of the things that people see and get upset about. He had a few games where he had a lot of bad passes, and I think that's what people remember. But as you said it, yeah, he's one of Carnell's guys. Every coach has a couple of players that are like his guys, and
Yep.
Stroud is one of those for Carnell. They have been in different teams, and a lot of his development was when Carnell was in Red Bulls. So I think we're gonna see him again next year, despite what a lot of people want. But
Well,
now,
on that note, Santi, so one of the things we didn't really talk about were some of I tried to pick up on nuances from the press conference of who's talking in certain tenses as
yeah,
far as what they're saying about next year, what they're saying about this past year. And this is entirely conjecture, but I do want to add my perspective. Jared Stroud mentioned a bunch of times next year, what he hopes to do next year. And I definitely think he's a player who's going to have his option picked up. I think we'll see Jared Stroud on this team next year if I had to make a bet. I heard obviously things from Tim Parker, Indiana Vasilev, Nico Gioacchini, all those guys. Without, again, nothing official, nothing confirmed, nothing even known. But I did notice that Sam Adeniran mentioned past tense a little more than some of the other players. He mentioned like having had success and didn't mention building on anything for the future necessarily. It could have just been the way questions were worded,
Yeah.
and it could be me reading too much into things. But, from Jared Stroud, I would fully expect to see him wearing a City kit next year.
I would just want to say about Stroud that, like, if people pictured him like they pictured Blom, like Blom has one job, and it's to shut down the counterattack.
Mhm.
If you just see Stroud as like a 6 in the forward position as far as the press, like, I think people would very much appreciate the work that he does on a much higher level. And I know
like that.
people don't think of wingers that way, but in our system, that's 100% what his main job is. But Santiago, what are your 3 players?
well, it's difficult after seeing Matt's list, and then you have to exclude Berkey, Leuven, and Parker. Definitely, I had Blom on my list just because all the stuff he did, especially after he got healthy and was able to string a few matches playing with the team. Matt, if I remember correctly, I think there was a stat like through like the middle of the season that I think the team only lost one game he started, but I don't remember the specifics. But it was like every time Jabula Blom starts, most of the time the team has won. Obviously, as the season went on, there were some more losses. But no, I really when he got healthy and started to be in the starting lineup, he just put together some great performances. He has struggled a little bit during the summer with the heat, but I think he now with a season under his belt and maybe being used to the summer, I think he's gonna be great next year. And for the other two, I had a hard time, like especially because this team had so many players that got minutes and had important games. So I'm just gonna go with with the way that the team handled things and gave opportunities to different players, and you have people shining in different moments. So the team as a whole is my, let's say, number 2 and number 3.
As of August 31st, the number was Blown by himself. We were 10-2-1 when he starts.
There you go.
And then you start pulling other players together. Blown, Parker, and Leuven at that point. We were 7-0-1 when they started. So yeah, Blown was. I loved hearing him on your list as well.
Yeah, I think Klaus and Blom are like, I don't know if you could leave them off the top 3 if you were to subtract the 3 you mentioned, Matt. I'm between Hiebert and Alm on this next one, just because Hiebert's usefulness and, oh man, I just like that he was able to change. But
Hiebert's usefulness, I like that.
like he never let us down.
His versatility,
you know
his durability.
Yes, thank you. What he was asked to do is just
keep him away from the right
crazy.
back position. That's all I ask.
I mean, I'd give him another shot. I really would.
Just not against Hani Mukhtar.
Fair enough. Yeah, right. Like, let's think about that. But I want to say Alm mainly just for talent reasons is, if we don't have that third DP or a U22 initiative, you need that goal dangerous attacker or like that person that stretches the field. I think, I raved about his vision as the season went on. I repeated it probably too much. And I think he's a step above our other wingers as far as attacking talent. And I think, and his usefulness in like a modern soccer system. And his pressing is just as good as everyone else's. Maybe not as good as Stroud's, but like he's up there, right? And so I want to say Alm, and I think if he was healthy all season, it would have been good. I think even like the playoffs might have been different if Alm was healthy. I truly do believe that to some extent.
Yeah, he was a difference. He was another one of those players that I could probably find whatever stat I had, but whenever he started, it was that kind of a difference maker. We were undefeated for a stretch of games with him, and it was. You hope that this offseason for Alm is just it gives you that rest and recovery, because that sports hernia, which they finally started calling it that at the end of the season, it just nagged him for the entire back half of the season. And he is a difference maker, and he would add so much versatility to what we can run out with either him at the right attacking mid or as a second striker on the right side. Him able to stretch the field like that is a difference maker, and it would be such a key piece to have for the depth we need next year.
And I would even say in the off season, buy a cheap right-footed burner. Just like his only job is to run fast. So if Alm goes down, you can use him, just like we have that, Brazilian goal dangerous dribbler that no one can stop in Celio. These are just like, and he's cheap, they're just like these profiles of players that you need on your team. And if one of them goes down and you don't have that option in a moment that you need it, I think, that kind of player might have helped us in the stretch as well.
Yeah, the July 27th stat that I had, as of July 27th this year, City was 11-4-2 when Alm is on the field, outscoring their opponents 36-16 in those games.
Oof.
When Alm was absent at that time, we were 2-4-0 and had been outscored 9-2.
Oh, wow.
Massive difference.
Yep. All right. We're running out of time, so let's push through this one just a little bit. Top 3 moments of the year. Matt, you start us off.
Yeah, I went back to the beginning. When you talk moments, I think, our breakdown of the blocks was pretty indicative, where there were some blocks there in the middle. We're just like, let's skip over this. Like there's nothing memorable. Some of them are obvious, but I went with the first ever goal at Austin. That whole Austin game was just tremendous. But to have Tim Parker score the set piece goal off the corner from Leuven and then do the pregnant celebration with the baby and the ball, and that was incredible. Actually, that I have a trading card of that. It was like the first ever soccer trading card I got, and it was of that moment. And it was just
that's cool.
Iconic. Yeah. My second one is the Charlotte match, and I couldn't pick one moment of this game. I'm sorry. Couldn't pick whether it was the build up to the first home game, the just the goal celebrations that occurred, the goals, the win, the first ever win on the first ever home game, beating Charlotte in general meant a pretty decent amount to me. So that was one of those things where it's like you talk back and forth to fans and you don't have anything to hang your hat on yet because we hadn't started. So much of the past year before that was Charlotte bagging on City for talking anything about
Yeah.
Charlotte, whether it's the turf, the PSLs, the head coach saying, I forget the quote, but it was really bad about their team, like we effing suck or something like that.
Yeah, we
That
are effed.
we are, yes, that's what it was.
Yes.
Yes, thank you.
Love it.
So the win at Charlotte, first home win, that was magical. And then I added the Miguel Perez goal against Vancouver. The first appearance that he made was incredible. But like I said, because the noise, the week of like the graduating high school, like we said on Thursday, and then scoring a goal in MLS on Saturday was incredible. And that's something that is not just fun for us as fans to experience and see for him, but he for long stretches of this season, and I know he kind of disappeared because he went back with City 2 and he was injured at the end of the year and developing and all that stuff. But if you guys remember this summer, it was kids were looking up to Miguel Perez. He was the poster boy and still is the poster boy for a kid growing up in St. Louis, around St. Louis, being identified in cornfields in the middle of Missouri.
Boonville, Missouri, yeah.
Yeah. And being given a chance and rising through the academy. I mean, he is the quintessential now St. Louis City Academy story. And to see that first goal so soon in part of that run of games where we're bouncing back and figuring out how to win without Klaus, it was perfect. It was exactly what we needed at that time. And that was a top moment for me.
Santi, you want to add to that?
Yeah. So obviously, Matt picked some great ones. So I'm gonna go with some different ones. That 5-goal win against Cincinnati. That was a great moment. Just because the team was coming from 2 losses, Cincinnati on top of the table, they were undefeated, and just all the things around that game that Saturday, like all the rain and people, like this, the doors open and some people came in and then they basically closed the doors and told people to go somewhere else, seek shelter, and then just starting so late, and it was a really electric atmosphere. The team scored like really early, like 3rd minute first goal, and then it was just a party from there. So that's one of my favorite ones.
Hey, Santi.
Yeah.
Who scored that first goal 3 minutes into the Cincinnati game?
Stroud.
There you go.
Hey, that was a good question.
Had to.
All right. So that was my number 1 from my list. Then this is not a specific moment, but I really enjoyed like seeing the tifos being unveiled, the different tifos the supporters had, and had a chance to help with some of them with painting or with doing different things around them. So I really enjoyed that, and it was great to see how all the supporters get together for that. So I really enjoyed that experience, and then seeing the final product and how proud everybody was. That was great. And my number 3 is just seeing our MLS Next Pro players from last year having success with the team, getting significant minutes, some of them scoring goals. It's just like one of those things you feel like, oh, I saw these guys last year playing with City 2, kind of obviously there was the academy, but then at the professional level, you had City 2 and you had these guys, and then you see them like going to the next level and you see them succeeding. So to me, that was great to see. It has been great to follow the footsteps of these players.
Man, that's such a good shout. I remember the SLU SIUE days, seeing before even Berkey and crew came in and thinking who's going to get a shot. besides Josh Yaro, who's already on a contract, like who's going to get the offer, who's going to prove themselves. And the moments of seeing Salio out on the wing, seeing Akil score bangers from outside the 18-yard box as a defensive midfielder, and then getting their shot this year, Salio scoring, Akil assisting, and seeing significant minutes as starters. I love that shout.
Yeah, really well done there, Santiago. And I bought that "We're Not in Kansas Anymore" shirt. This is my favorite one this year. Well done on all of them, but that was my favorite. I wanted to wear it. It feels a little weird to wear, actually. So we'll see if I get over that or not. But I just want to add one moment. You guys were awesome with your shouts. For me, I said this on KTRS when it was asked. It's that first real Charlotte goal, not the PK, not the own goal, but the first real one. I think it was Klaus, right? Where like Klaus like throws his hands out and you can tell how happy he is. And then he says after, like, it feels like home, like I have my club again, or for the first time in his life even. So that felt so good, because I think that's something that we as fans want from our players. And I think it was Soccer Vixen is a St. Louis account, right? Like she's had some really fun stuff lately. And my favorite one I think she's ever posted was 4 different players said something about St. Louis being home, or Nico buying that house, or like everyone had 4 different players had something to say about loving St. Louis. And I just love that. In that moment, it was so loud. We were happy for Klaus. We were happy to get the goal, and it was the go-ahead goal, if I'm not mistaken. And what a great moment. It was so loud. First real goal at home. It was, in my mind, I know they all counted, but that was the first real goal for me. And it really did. It played out in a way that it's like, yeah, this is repeatable. And it was, right? It was, and will be next year as well. So that was my last one. First transfer window. This is a fun one. We're going to want to talk about this forever, because
I bet we could probably talk about most of this.
Our bread and butter.
Yeah, we could probably slide this in with our roster talk next week. But there was some talks about, Marcanic and Thoresen especially, because Marcanic, it was pretty apparent he took his opportunity as soon as he got in to find himself in the starting 11. But this is specifically related to what Lutz was saying when I asked him about how he viewed the transfer window this past summer and how does it inform what he does going forward. And he reiterated a lot about every move is strategic long term. There was a moment in the press conference too where he also referred back to a 5-year plan. Santi, I don't know if you caught that one, but early on, and it's almost like I couldn't tell if it was 5 years from when he was signed, 5 years from our first year. Hard to tell on that. But in the sense of he has a 5-year plan, a long-term plan to build and set this roster up for success long-term. Marcanic and Thoresen were brought in for next year. Like, that's the takeaway for this. And he reiterated that, where they're not short-term fixes. And I don't think we ever expected them to be short-term fixes this year. But he did say that Marcanic, he didn't say surprised, but he was essentially like, he was brought in as a backup. Like, we brought him in for that depth that he didn't like to talk about. But he said Marcanic surprised him, and he took the opportunity, and suddenly he's starting, and he won those internal competitions. Thoresen started, he scored a goal, but the lack of what we saw from Knutby Thoresen this year can't be read into too much, because Lutz was very specific that this was a guy they brought in who needed a preseason. He needed this year what Berkey, Klaus, Leuven, etc. had for City 2 last year. And if you remember City 2 last year, they only played a handful at most games. They didn't come in to get going and help City 2 go towards the Western Conference title. No, and that's similar to what I view as Knutby Thoresen this year. And I don't know if that's going to be a hallmark of Lutz's summer transfer windows, but don't read the lack of Thoresen in the back half of the season as he fell out of favor or he's a bust. I would look for him next year very much to be an impact player.
I agree with you. I still see him as a long-term signing, but and there is actually a question about him here from Chris, and he was asking about Thoresen, why he wasn't getting minutes late in the season. So at least my personal view, even though he was labeled as a long-term project, he had success early, and I think the team said, okay, maybe he can help us this season. And the the player that basically stopped getting minutes because they wanted to take a look at Nuke Vitorison was Celio. He ended up not being in the lineup a few times. Then he went to City 2.
Yeah.
And then you could see like that switch when Celio started to get minutes again was when Torison started
That's a good call.
stop getting minutes. So I think yeah, it was worth taking a look at Torison and see if he could help this season. But then I think they realized, okay, maybe he needs more time, and let's just stick to the plan. He's a project for next season and the years to come, and then they went back to Celio, and Celio had some good performances. So it will be great to see the competition between those two next year.
Thorson for me is someone that could rise to the level of Alm. I think he's got that level of talent. He's a good presser, and he has a lot to offer in goal scoring ability. Not dribbly per se. He's not a speedster, but he is athletic, and he's got a good engine, and he's just capable of scoring from a lot of different places on the pitch. No matter where he is, if you get him the ball in the box or near the box, he has a good chance of converting it. And so that's my favorite thing about him. And I think that's going to be vital going forward. If we lose any wingers and we don't add too many, I think that means Thorson is going to get lots and lots of time. And I look forward to that. Marcanic, I think we all thought, I don't know, if we learn one thing about Marcanic, I think it's that the Rapids did a terrible job using him, because even we didn't scout him to the level of someone like John Nelson, right? Like we thought John Nelson could be better than any other option we could pick up in MLS. And turns out, I think Marcanic very easily outplayed him once he got his chance. All things aren't even there, and that may end up being wrong in the long run. We don't know what the future holds for John Nelson, but Marcanic did really well. I think he looked great, and I think the Rapids very badly misused him and probably should have been using him in a lot of ways, and probably in different ways, by the way that things were talked about with Matt when he came on the show about the Rapids.
Yeah. And real quick before we go, some of the other moments that are called out, Chris Gebhardt in the chat, the first time they turned off the lights and did the red out. That was something that was awesome to see for the first time, but the progression of that, and then the little extra light show they added during the playoffs, those were some amazing moments. Those are kind of like the memories that you think of, and they're like those core memories of your experience where you want to get there. The club doesn't need to tell you to get there beforehand. You just know to get there because you want to be a part of that. You want to be a part of the drum beat, the STL, the lights out, everything that Muse music can really offer. Uprising has become a theme of St. Louis City because of that. And then Billy says he would add the stretch of goals in 12 minutes versus Kansas. But I do think I had to look that up because it's actually 4 goals in 12 minutes in that September 30th game. Adeniran at 73, Stroud 75, Klaus at 80, and again at 85. That against SKC, third match of the year, winning the regular season series against them. The playoffs didn't go how we wanted it to, but that is something that we will never forget, is that home match and amazing moments all around.
Yep. And the red out thing, and Santiago was smart enough to mention the tifos. When we did the fan reaction at that last playoff event, almost everyone was talking about the tifos or the stadium experience. And it just speaks to how lucky we are to have the Luligans, to have Santos, to have Punks, Fleur de Noise, and again, the creative department that is inside of the St. Louis staff, and how smart they all were to integrate together and to put value in that experience. It's very, very clear that was important to them, and that they thought it was a vital part of giving people good memories. Turns out they were right. This is proof. So
yeah, and guys, just talking about the tifos very quick, the players really appreciate that.
Yeah,
I had a chance to ask Indy and Nilsson about it, and they say, yeah, we I asked, I know you guys are have a game, but do you take a few seconds to appreciate the tifo? And yeah, 100%, and we love it. And it was great to hear that from them. And even Nilsson, I was planning to ask him, but he brought it up. He even wasn't sure how what it was called here. He was like, "Oh, in Europe we call it tifos." And I was like, "Yeah, it's the same here."
Nice.
But yeah, he just said, "Yeah, it's just very appreciative of the creativity the fans have." And both of them said, "Yeah, we take a few seconds to appreciate it, and it is great to see what the fans put together for us."
On the
Agreed.
fan note, we talked about it at the end of the regular season, but I wanted to reiterate another moment that I think not a lot of people got to appreciate because it came after a loss against Seattle, and the people didn't stick around, I think, to really see, and it didn't get the notoriety in the stadium. The supporters, the leaders of the supporter groups, gave bricks to all the players at the end of the season, and they called it Bricks Giving, and it was giving named plaques on the bricks to each player and staff member, saying, you're basically a part of us. You're a part of St. Louis. And it referenced the 1849 devastating fires destroying large parts of the city and the red bricks that were risen from those ashes type of a thing, from the homes of neighborhoods in the Old North, Benton Park, to breweries, everything. And so calling every one of the players, every one of the staff, saying you're now a part of the fabric that is St. Louis as we know today. And that was the bricks symbolizing the deep appreciation for this inaugural season and how far they've come and what they can build for the future. Those moments, I think that puts a cap on everything that we've talked about this entire show, everything that all the memories we look back on that we're going to carry with us for our lifetimes, and what these players, this first ever inaugural team, means to us as fans, to the city, and to each other, because there will never come again a first ever St. Louis MLS roster. And this was it. These were our guys. These were our ride or dies. And they gave us record breaking moments. They gave us 17 wins. They gave us a first place in the conference regular season. Then they gave us more memories than we ever could have hoped for the first season. So I know I'm so appreciative of what the players and the staff built, created, and sustained throughout this year. They made it fun every single week to do this show. And it's one of those things that you hope is a certain way, but you never really expect it to be what they ended up delivering.
Well said. Absolutely. This is the 82nd episode of the season, guys.
Wow.
Yeah. And I think we started in the preseason. Once preseason started, that's when I started considering this season 2 of kind of the modern era of flyover footy.
The first season was basically everything before this, right? Like 2019, 2021. I'm serious. Like that's
like, I would think of it as like the MLS or City 2 rather, kind of like the City 2 season. And yeah, I guess the start of MLS in general. Yeah. In St. Louis. Yeah. So anything, since preseason of this season, 82 episodes. And, I love Santiago. I love Stuart. And I feel so lucky to do this, but, special shout to Matt Baker. This man clearly puts in the most time, does all the research, is so solid. Once he reports something, you pretty much know it's going to be true, or he's got a good argument for whatever opinion he posts. And he sets a standard for quality. And he's the only reason we got 82 episodes in. I can tell you that for damn sure. So Matt, dude, you're a fucking beast. Thanks for joining Flyover and making it what it is. I mean, it's all you, bud. So thank you so much for that, man. You deserve a lot more than a commendation at the end of an episode, and hopefully we'll get you a little more than that. But thanks, dude.
Appreciate it. I agree. Thanks, Matt, for everything. You make it so easy for us, and we really appreciate it.
Yeah.
There's nothing I'd rather do more with, and there's nobody I'd rather do it more than with you guys. You make it fun to do, and this team makes it fun, and it's easy to do something you're passionate about, and right. I've enjoyed every minute of it. Thank you.
And thanks to you guys for listening. That's it from us today. A few more weeks. I mean, it's not long. 52 days until the transfer.
Who's counting?
Oh my goodness.
It's funny. We talk about taking time off when we just dropped down to one episode a week.
Wild.
A year or two ago. Could you imagine that?
No, absolutely not. I'd be like, every other week sounds pretty good.
I know. So looking ahead to this offseason, though, we've talked, and next week we're going to do some kind of a roster review. So looking at the contracts, the salaries, the offseason calendar for MLS, what we can look forward to. Obviously we'll take some time off for Thanksgiving and the holidays and things like that. But whenever we can, whatever we need to have some content to get everybody ready for the off season and up to date on what's going on, we're going to do. So we're still sticking around, even if we don't have game recaps for another couple of months.
All right, we're giving you that Midwest goodbye treatment tonight. So thanks for sticking with us if you're still here. Flyover Footy, we'll be talking to you throughout the off season, and it won't be long before we're talking about real soccer in St. Louis again. Bye, everybody. Have a good night.